So this short podcast will look at connectivity and how it helps trade. Trade is occurring around the world, and the increased connectivity can help trade occur. And connectivity is how connected nations are, and this connection might be through IT infrastructure, road and rail infrastructure, political links to other countries. And it all helps to improve what is called a supply chain, sometimes referred to as the global value chain. And here's an example in this top diagram of primary industry, drilling for oil. And this oil is then transported around the world, providing there is sufficient infrastructure of road and rail and sea. Then it is, in a secondary industry, refined into a petrol, transported out to petrol stations, and the tertiary industry then, the petrol is sold to customers. And there are different organisations involved in helping these supply chains, such as the World Economic Forum and the Organisation for Economic Cooperation and Development. And these help set up policies to allow the supply chains to work effectively around the world. But this map underneath the OECD logo shows the member countries of the OECD. And you'll notice that if we draw the Brandt line across it, that these members are in advanced countries, suggesting that perhaps the less income developing countries don't really have a say in the policies, and therefore maybe they're at a disadvantage and don't get the benefits of a lot of political backing in getting involved in the supply chains. There are, of course, lots of hazards involved in the supply chain. Natural hazards, as illustrated in the little diagram there, flooding, wildfires, tsunamis, earthquakes. They can have an impact on the supply chain at any point. They could destroy infrastructure, or they could interrupt oil production. There could be political factors as well, of course, whereas price wars may occur between different nations in the price of petrol. There can be things like piracy and terrorism. Often boats and tankers are taken for ransom. So that's a little bit on the supply chains. But things that help the supply chains, things like ICT and communication technology. Countries that have good internet access are able to get involved in these supply chains. They need to have a good IT infrastructure. And this map here shows you a number of users on a world map. Now, yes, okay, population numbers vary, but overwhelmingly, large parts of Africa, there are very, very few internet users. And we know that many countries in Africa will have large populations due to high birth rates, as it's an LIDC. But IT and communication technology can help countries be connected to other countries. That's that connectivity bit. They can allow countries to access global markets. Transport technology, really, really important in getting involved in a supply chain. If you want to be involved in moving goods around the world, then you need to have a big port, a big harbour. Now that comes down to physical factors like having a deep water channel close to your country, but it also comes down to economic factors like can your country afford to invest in this infrastructure of cranes and ports. The size of ships has been developed over the years to develop these huge ships. The bigger the ships, the more containers that can be added to them, and that reduces the cost of transport, allowing more people to get involved in transporting their goods around the world. Aeroplane technology, building of airports in various countries, but also the design of planes. Look at this Airbus here, really odd shaped at the front. And this is a plane that's been designed to carry planes. So within this strange shape, you could find the whole fuselage. And Airbus make their various different parts around the world, landing gear, wings, fuselage, wingtips, all in different places. And they're transported in planes like this to their main assembly factory. Obviously, road and rail networks, they're really important as well to help move goods around within countries, from factories perhaps that are manufacturing goods to the ports ready for export. Also involved within the supply chain is this idea of outsourcing, where a company may ask other companies to do roles for them. Perhaps a company that is, on a small scale, a florist. Maybe they want a company to advertise them. So they will go to a specialist marketing agency and they will pay them to do some marketing for them. which means the company of the florists don't need the skills of marketing. They often do this to cut costs. It can be a cost-saving way. One sort of famous example is call centres, perhaps, for large multinational companies. And these call centres are located often in newly developing countries, the BRIC countries, particularly in areas where there is good education levels, so people are well qualified to do the jobs asked of them. And often it comes from multinational companies. We'll look at multinational companies in a week's time. But these multinational companies such as Coca-Cola, Nike, Apple, they outsource a lot of their work to the developing countries, which is a good thing for the developing nations because it allows some industry, some trade to be happening there as well. And hopefully then, with that money they generate, they can improve their own transport and technology infrastructure, their own communication infrastructure, and take an ever increasing role within the supply chain of goods.